Legacy, paving your path to home ownership. My name is Teresa McDuffie. I am your Legacy Program Director, and I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We have a wonderful class again tonight, none other than LaShawn Abraham, who is the sales manager at Guile Mortgage. Thank you so much for joining us, LaShawn. So now, before we get into the class and before I introduce the speaker, I just want to let you know that if you have any questions, please feel free to ask your questions. You can actually take yourself off of mute and ask the question if you choose to, or you can add your question in the chat box and someone will ask your question for you. So feel free. We want to make sure that we get all the questions that you have and that we have an engaging conversation because we do believe that home ownership is one of the best ways to build wealth, but not only wealth, generational wealth. So we want you to hear everything that LaShawn has to say. So now let me introduce her. LaShawn is a native of Columbus, Georgia, but has resided in Charleston, South Carolina since 1998. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from South Carolina State University. LaShawn has been in the mortgage industry for 9 years and can offer a vast amount of knowledge. She is an active member in her community and has dedicated her life to service. She's best known for her attention to detail, ease of communication, and reliability. She is committed to making sure clients thoroughly understand the mortgage process and keeping them informed every step of the way. LaShawn believes honesty, integrity, transparency, and professionalism are the key foundations when working with customers. When she is not helping people build a legacy through home ownership, LaShawn enjoys spending time with her family and friends, which include her husband and 2 daughters. LaShawn has a passion for education. She is always striving to do good things for others and to maintain a positive attitude. LaShawn is also an active participant in her local church in the city of North Charleston and participates with various ministries within the church. And again, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. LaShawn, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for reading that. I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I don't think I ever have had someone read my biography back to me, but thank you. And honestly, I mean, it's every bit of it is true. I mean, I have a deep passion for serving my community, for educating my community. I feel like home ownership and just the role that I'm serving right now has become another part of my ministry that I do, because it takes a positive attitude, it takes willpower and determination in order to truly make home ownership possible, which is what we're going to talk about today. So thank you guys for taking the time out of your evening to join this call so that we can go over it. As Teresa mentioned, please stop me at any time if you guys have any questions. I want you guys to truly walk away from this presentation, with any questions that you may have or anything that you want to know. I'll try to answer kind of like the most frequent questions that I get asked, because you guys may have some of those same questions as well. So without further ado, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, so we can go ahead and get started. All right, so Teresa gave my biography about who I am and how long I've been in the business. But there's another part to me as well, which is my husband. So currently we are a husband and wife team. So we both work for Guile Mortgage. He is my loan partner. So typically how our process works is I usually do most of the upfront consultations, kind of getting people started with the process. And then once you kind of go under contract and you actually secure a home, my husband takes over and kind of helps, guide you along the way with making sure we get the proper paperwork and putting you guys in the right programs. So as I am born in Georgia, but from Charleston. I went to middle school and high school here. I tell people that I went to the old style high school. I graduated from Stall High School, and I also went to South Carolina State. My husband is from Orangeburg. He graduated from OW, and we met at South Carolina State. And we have truly helped over hundreds of families. I think year to date, we are pushing at least, I think we're at like 552 people that we have helped so far to truly purchase a home. So we have the experience, we have the knowledge, we have the patience, and we are here to advocate for you guys to help you guys understand the process of homeownership. So first question, first topic I would say is homeownership benefits. Like, what are the benefits of purchasing a home? What are they? So when you think about renting versus buying, here are some things to consider. Of course, when you're renting, you're building your landlord's equity, like all that money that you pay month after month after month, you will never get that back. You might get back your security deposit, but you won't truly ever get back the money that you put in rent. If you really start doing some market research and looking at data and statistics, the net worth of a person who rents is far less than a person who owns. Because when you own, you build something called equity. So equity is like a word that's like, what does that really mean? And so equity is truly the cash value of a house. Prime example, when I bought my first home, my husband and I, we were 23 years old. We truly, just literally would move every year because our rent kept going up. And so when we made the decision that, hey, it's time for us to buy, we bought a house back in 2011. At the time, I will tell people at the time, you could purchase a home for around $120,000. It was a fairly new home. It was only like a year or two old. It was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. We stayed in that house for about 5 years, and then we sold that house. However, what happened is what we sold the house for versus what we paid for it, that gap in between is called your equity. So we bought it for 120. We sold it for 180. But when we sold it, because we already stayed in it 5 years, we no longer owed $180,000. At that time, we only owed maybe $100,000. So if you think about only owing $100,000, sell it for 180, that $80,000, that's your money. That's your wealth. That's your financial freedom, that you can use that money to do all sorts of things with. Some people may use the equity in their house to send their kids to college, to get out of debt, to make other investments. The sky's the limit. We decided to use that money to pay off student loans, pay off, other debts that we had. And we also use that money to actually buy another home. So when I tell people, if you think about it from a 5-year stance, like, what could you possibly do? There's no 401k unless you hit the lottery, and then they're going to tax the mess out of it. And you probably won't even get that. So unless you hit the lottery, or any other investment accounts out there, does not give you that type of return on your investment that quickly. And if most people that's on this call, if you guys are from the Charleston area, and it is first, especially for a person like myself who have seen the growth, and you see the prices of these houses. If you owned a house in the last 3 or 4 years, your house has almost doubled in value, just because Charleston has become such a demand. People want to live and move here. And so because there's such a high desire for people to want to live in this particular area, what's happening is that's making people's property values go up. And they're not doing nothing to their property. They just literally bought a house, and now their house is worth $50,000 to $100,000, sometimes even $200,000 more than what they paid for. And that right there is one of the major benefits of owning a house, because you can leave that house to your family, you can pass it down, which start, like Teresa mentioned, start creating that generational wealth. One of the other benefits of owning a home versus unlike renting is tax benefits. So if you ever want to figure out how to reduce your tax liability, how to get more taxes back, owning a house does it. That interest that you pay every month, that money, that interest that you're paying, you can actually write it off. And so you think about another benefit of home ownership is it's yours. You can make the space your own. You don't have to necessarily, worry about, okay, is the landlord going to fix my air conditioning if it goes out? Are they going to fix the plumbing if it goes out? Because when it's yours, you control that. You can call the repairman. It's yours. You can make it your own. If you want green walls, you can do that. If you want to add a wall, knock down a wall, you can do it. If you want to do special landscaping or add something for your kids in the backyard, you can do it because it's your space. One of the other major benefits of owning a home is rent typically increases every year. But when you own a home and you get and I would definitely preface that, you get a fixed rate mortgage, your mortgage payment does not change. That payment is fixed. You know how much your mortgage is going to be unless you refinance your home, sell your home, or make any other changes to the terms of your loan. This is your mortgage, and that's what it's going to be. I literally moved every year because my rent went up every year. And I don't know anywhere where rent stays the same forever, especially if you think about over the last 10 or 15 years, rent has definitely is much on the higher end. So those are some of the basic benefits of home ownership and what it can truly do for you and your family. So next is what does it mean to own a home? If you really think about that, the biggest thing that comes to mind for myself is stability. There's so many statistics that's out there that says that when a person owns a home, when those parents, that mom or dad, or just mom, whoever bought that home, when they own a home and they have children, it provides them with security. And also it provides them with stability because they're no longer moving, every year, every 2 or 3 years. They are in a stable environment. And there's so many statistics that show from a psychological standpoint for a child, when a child has that stability, they perform better in school and they have way more opportunity. We already talked about the wealth building aspect of what does it mean to own a home. A lot of people use, like I said, they leverage that equity in the house to do all sorts of things. Like I said, whether you wanted to send your kids to college, whether you wanted to pay debt, reduce debt, consolidate debt, whatever you want to do, the skies are the limit. One of the other things that it means to own a home is it gives you a sense of community. When a person owns a home and you get to go out and walk your dog, your kids get to ride their bikes or play in the yard, you get to meet your neighbors and build other relationships. It gives you that sense of community. And also statistics have shown when you truly pay for something, that financial responsibility, you take better care of it. You also have that sense of pride that, okay, this is mine, like I'm owning this. And so it gives you also a better quality of life because homeowners, typically have a better quality of life because of all the other things that it provides between the stability, the sense of community, and just building, something sacred there. It actually helps your life quality to be much better. So if you want to get started purchasing a home, how do you start? Where do you start? The first step that I tell people is sometimes you have to do your own personal inventory. You need to take a look at your own credit report, not necessarily your credit scores, but I say your credit report. Every American is entitled to a free credit report from all 3 credit bureaus once a year. You can pull one from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. The website is called annualcreditreport.com. All you have to do is sign up. It's absolutely free. And I would say once a quarter, every 3 or 4 months, take a look at your credit report. You'll be surprised what's on there. You want to look at the data and make sure that it's accurate. You want to make sure that there's no errors because sometimes there could be things reporting on your credit that you had no idea that it's there. You're like, oh my gosh, like what? Like I thought I turned in my cable equipment and they end up putting it in collections or something. So take a look at your credit report just so that when you come to me and we're sitting down looking at your credit and I'm like, well, you got 3 or 4 collections, you're not like shocked and surprised. Next is think about your down payments, explore those options. Think about, hey, how much money do I have to put down? How much money do I want to put down? Because when I meet with you, I'm going to ask you, hey, what are your needs? So you should kind of already, start thinking about, okay, do I have money to put down, or am I going to look for some type of first-time home buyer program or down payment assistance? And we'll kind of touch on that a little bit. But first, you need to do a personal assessment to kind of figure that out. Getting pre-approved. To me, that's number one. After you've looked at your stuff, your absolute next step should be getting pre-approved. It is not go talk to a realtor. It is not, stop at a new construction site and just go looking at homes and things like that. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do not do that. And the reason for that is that this mind is very powerful, ours. And that if you start seeing and looking at something before you know what you are truly eligible for, it can truly kind of discourage you in the process. Because once you set your eyes on something and you see this nice, shiny, beautiful house, and then you realize that once you sit with me, if there's things that you need to work on and things that you may, need to, kind of work out, or you may not be able to get approved for whatever this beautiful home that you already went and looked at and kind of fell in love with, all that do is discourage you. So I highly recommend people to get pre-approved first and then look at house. Don't go, even surfing on the internet, looking at Zillow or realtor.com at homes without knowing what you can qualify for. And so we'll kind of hit on a little bit about the process of actually getting pre-approved. And then once you're pre-approved, you should then hire a real estate agent so that they can help you find the house that you're looking for based on your budget and based on what you can get approved for. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. So we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting. Budgeting is super important in the home buying process because you need to make sure that you know what you have coming in and what you have going out, because this will truly help determine what can you really afford. Because we're going to touch on that a little bit too, because there is a difference between affordability and eligibility. I may qualify you, or you may be eligible to purchase, say, a $300,000 home. However, you may not be able to truly afford it, because as a mortgage loan officer, we look at whatever debt you have. We don't look at the bills you pay or any other financial obligations. So that's it's a big deal, and it's a big difference. So for example, you may have debt, which is like student loans, a car loan, credit cards, things like that. Bills are like your light bill. You might pay daycare for your kids. You might have car insurance, cell phone bills. We don't include any of that stuff when we're considering you for a mortgage loan, but these are things that you truly pay. So you need to make sure that you understand what your budget is and how much you truly can afford to spend on a mortgage for a house. So we're going to talk a little bit about down payment assistance, because there is programs out there. So I don't want people to think that, oh my gosh, I can never buy a house. Trying to save $8,000 to $10,000 is impossible. There is help out there. However, I strongly encourage people who want to buy a house that nothing is given for free, and you will need money to purchase a home. There are a lot of things floating around the internet, social media, and sometimes I just feel like this depends on who you talk to. People give a lot of misinformation and tell you that you can buy a house with no money. That is absolutely false. You will need money in some shape, form, or fashion to purchase a home. Now, the amount of money that you may need will actually vary depending on your own individual personal assessment, based on your credit, based on your income, based on what loan program you're eligible for. That will kind of determine what you truly can qualify for or not qualify for. But however, there are programs out there that are 100% financing, like things like a USDA loan or a VA loan if you're a veteran. There are down payment assistance programs. We are an approved lender to offer something called South Carolina Housing. And so they provide anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance. We also partner with local nonprofits that offer other grant money, like Increasing Hope and an agency called Origin SC. So there are a lot of resources out there to assist you. But like I said before, and I'll say it again, make sure you are also saving money of your own too, because you are going to need money to buy a house. So this is kind of like a small little snapshot of the home buying process. So as I mentioned before, first step, get pre-approved. Second step, shop for the home. We're going to touch on staying pre-approved once you are pre-approved, and then buy your home, your homeowner. So it's not a very difficult process, but there are a lot of steps in between, and we'll kind of touch on them a little bit. So getting pre-approved, what do we look for? So myself, I am what's called, even though I'm the sales manager, what that means is that I manage a branch of that, also have other loan officers inside of my branch, but I'm also a loan officer. So what a loan officer is a loan officer, and I would say all loan officers are not created equal. And people use the term loan officer, lender, mortgage consultant, mortgage banker, mortgage broker. They use them all interchangeably, but they do technically have different meanings. If you go to a bank to get a loan, you're dealing with a mortgage banker or mortgage consultant. Typically, if you go outside the bank to get a loan, you're dealing with some type of lender. And so the difference between the two, the major difference between the two is I have a license. I took hours every year. I do continuing educations to keep my license active. So I have a license to lend money. In some other places, they don't require a license. It's just you apply for a job and you can, consult with people about mortgages, but you don't truly have a license to do mortgages. So myself, what I do is I'm able to review your financial information and find a loan program to meet your goals. If you're telling me, hey, I want a mortgage payment of $1,500, I only want to pay X out of pocket, I need down payment assistance, whatever it may be, I look at your data, review your information, and help you find a loan to accommodate what your needs are. However, I do not officially approve you for a loan. The most I do is something called pre-approval, which is what we're going to talk about. So there is 3 levels to an approval. There is a pre-approval, there's something called a conditional approval, and then there's a final approval. The conditional and final approval comes from a person called an underwriter. The underwriter don't ever get to meet you, talk to you, any of that stuff. All they do is look at the financial information that you have submitted to myself that we submit to them. So making sure that you have the proper paperwork to support whatever you have going on financially is going to be super important, because your debt to income ratio is going to determine what is your buying power. If you have a lot of debt, it will decrease the amount that you can get approved for a loan. If you're putting down less money, it will decrease the amount that you can get approved for. If your credit history, credit scores are a little bit lower, it will decrease what you can get approved for. And so when we look at these things that are listed here, which is your debt to income ratio, how much money are you putting down? Your credit history, do you have any money saved with your assets? How long have you been on your jobs? And what does your credit report really looks like as far as, have you had any bankruptcy, foreclosure? All of that stuff kind of comes into play when it's time to buy a house. Now, I'm not gonna lie, because like Teresa read my bio, I'm very transparent, and integrity is everything to me. So I tell people buying a house is not easy, because if it was easy, I think everyone would own a home. But it's not impossible. It's just that you just have to be, informed, educated about what's needed so that you can prepare yourself. Because I find that it's most difficult for people who are not prepared. So it's my job to help you guys to become prepared to buy a house. And how we do that is doing those personal financial assessments. Or even if you're not sure of how to do that, still sitting with the loan officer so they can kind of guide you and go over that stuff with you, so that you can have a plan in place to be like, okay, what do I need to do? How do I qualify to buy a house? And that loan officer will assist you with doing so. So we did get a question, and so I will read it. So it says, how comparable are the pre-approval numbers on Credit Karma versus reality? I say this as kindly as I can, and I just hope I don't get in trouble for saying it. I would not believe anything on Credit Karma, period. Credit Karma, I'll take it back a little bit. Credit Karma is good for the data that it provides you as far as like what's on your credit report. When it comes to the credit scores, they're not accurate. When it comes to whatever they're pre-approving you for, it's not accurate because they're not taking into consideration the big picture. They're looking at a snapshot of whatever you have either entered on their site or whatever information that you have gave them access to. So I would not follow anything that they tell you, or not, take it to heart. If they say, yeah, you pre-approve, I wouldn't bank on it, because if they're not collecting actual real live paperwork from you and doing like a full assessment and a thorough review, they're just hypothetically guessing of what you could be approved for, not what you're actually approved for. But that is a very good question. You're very welcome. So moving right along. So the documentation that you would usually need when you're wanting to start the pre-approval process, we typically collect 30 days of pay stubs. We collect 2 years of W-2s. We usually ask for the most recent. So we're in the year 2023. So we would ask for your 2021 and your 2022 W-2s and taxes. We'll ask for any type of documentation to support whatever your financial story is. If you tell me you work for, FedEx and you make X amount an hour and you have $10,000 in the bank, we have to get a pay stub, a W-2, a bank statement, all of this paperwork to support what you say. If we cannot document whatever it is that you say you make or you bring in, we can't count it. And the biggest thing is cash. A lot of people, either deal with cash, they get cash apps and things like that. That stuff can't be truly verified, and it's not a valid source for us to use in this transaction. So please be very careful with things like that. Even if you have someone giving you money or you have things going in and out of your account, that right there is like a major red flag, and you're going to have to, answer questions regarding where did this money come from. We have to do something called source those funds. So if you're not able to document it or show a paper trail of where that money came from, then 9 times out of 10, we can't use it. Same thing for a big one that comes up a lot is child support. If the child support isn't like court ordered, we can't use it. If you're, if the person who's paying child support, just pays it, randomly, or pays it, even if they're paying it, on time, but if it's not truly documented, court order, things like that, we can't count it. So think about what mortgage documentation is key. We have to have documentation to support every piece of the puzzle, whether it's the pay stubs, the W-2s, the bank statements, the tax returns. We collect so much paperwork because all of it tells us something differently. If a person receives Social Security, if they're, retired, all of that good stuff, we collect documentation regarding that as well. So these right here are just some loan programs that we offer here at Guild. Honestly, we have over 600 loan programs, and it's not up to you guys to kind of figure out what loan, you want. You may have an idea of what loan may fit your life, but it's our job as a loan officer to figure out, okay, this loan will be great for you based on this. One of the questions that I get asked a lot is like, well, what credit score do I need to buy a house? And that's kind of like a little bit of a, a tricky question, because technically, as you can see, we can do loans as low as a 580. I've even done a loan as low as a 540, but there's a big however there. And the however is typically the lower the credit score, the more it's going to cost you. When I say more, it's either you're going to need a higher down payment, either you're going to pay higher interest rate and fees if the credit score is lower. So one of my recommendations is that I'd recommend that everyone have at least a 620, because at a 620, you'll still get a decent rate. You can still be eligible for some down payment assistance programs. There's lots of options still at a 620, but the sky's the limit. The highest credit score is an 850. Shoot for the fences if you want to get the scores higher, but I would tell you to at minimum have a 620. But the better credit, gives you a better rate, gives you some better loan options as well. Does anybody have any other questions? And let me know if I'm going too fast. I do these a lot, so sometimes I tend to just spit off information. But
I had one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can somebody qualify for a new home buyer program if they've been on a deed of a house but have never actually owned a mortgage?
That's a great question. And so I actually just got asked that question earlier today. I had someone say, oh, well, I'm a first-time home buyer because my name is not on the mortgage, but my name is on the deed. My husband owned the house, or my husband holds the mortgage. And so can I qualify for a first-time home buyer program and things like that? So technically speaking, the answer kind of varies depending on the type of loan it is. All in all, if your name is on the deed, you are owner of the house. It doesn't matter if your name is on the mortgage or not. If your name is on the deed means that you own the house. So you have something called ownership interest in the property, and therefore technically you're not a first-time home buyer. However, the definition of a first-time home buyer varies depending on what type of loan you're eligible for. So for example, for a conventional loan, which is kind of like your general standard type of loan, they consider a first-time home buyer is somebody who has not owned a house or have had ownership interest within the last 3 years. So if you owned a house at some point, you sold it, didn't buy a house for 3 years, technically you can come back and say you're a first-time home buyer again and be able to take advantage of some programs. There are some loan programs that are offered through other agencies that are kind of like either portfolio loans or things like that. They classify a first-time home buyer as long as you don't own a house at the time of closing. So what that means is that you could own a house today, you sell it in the morning, later tonight, you're no longer a first-time home buyer once the check clears. You are a first-time home buyer all over again because technically you don't own the house somewhere because you just sold it. So you have to really kind of take it case by case. Based on the type of loan program that you're eligible for or the loan program that you're seeking. Typically, for most down payment assistance programs, they want you to be a first-time home buyer. They don't usually follow the rules in regards to it's been 3 years, you just sold the house, that stuff. Generally speaking, they want to make sure that they're helping assist people who truly are in need of the funds and they have not truly had the opportunity to purchase. So you just kind of got to take it. But for example, even FHA and or VA, they don't have any first time, or USDA, they don't have any first time home buyer requirements. All they require is that you currently don't own a home or that you're either purchasing the home as your primary residence. So there are lots of options here. So we're going to touch a little bit about the home buying process. So generally speaking, once you find a house, it generally can take anywhere from 30 to 45 days for you to actually go through the entire process and truly become a homeowner. However, depending on the lender, I've closed loans in 14 to 20 days. I have took some loans that took months and months and months, depending on if you're building a house or if there's some kind of major repairs that needs to be done to the house. It can truly vary, but on average, 30, 45 days is typical. Once the loan application is received, you go through the process of getting the home inspected and appraised, you find insurance, and then that file goes to a loan processor, or it goes into something called loan processing. And so what that is, as I mentioned before, myself as the loan officer, I grab your information, I review it, I assess it, and then I make my evaluation on, okay, yes, you can be pre-approved. But then once you actually find a house, we talked about those 3 levels of approval. You have that conditional approval that comes next, and then you have a final approval. So what the loan processor does, the loan processor is kind of like the middleman or woman between the loan officer and the underwriter. And so all of the paperwork that you give me, the loan processor kind of double checks behind me, and they work with the underwriter to make sure that you meet the guidelines for the loan that you're seeking and for the property that you're buying. So for example, like myself, I will collect your pay stubs. The loan processor and the underwriter, they go a step deeper. So they will actually call your job, verify that you work there, not just in the beginning of the process, they'll verify it several times throughout the process and before you actually close on your property. So they kind of do deeper dives and deeper touches. Underwriting, like I said, they're the ones that kind of give that final stamp of approval. And then you also have a closing department. In the closing department, these closers are working very closely with real estate attorneys to make sure that there's I would say no liens on the property, that you can properly get your house, the title insurance and things like that. So that all happens in our closing department. And then once all of that checks out and everything is good, then you truly will get your keys. So we have another question. So it says, as a buyer, is it a good option to offer the seller a earlier closing, like 10 to 15 days? I would say yes, depending on the circumstance. So for example, I would say during COVID, in this area, probably in a lot of areas, I mean, the market was very hot. And when I say hot, I mean like houses did not stay on the market longer than 30 minutes. I mean, as soon as a person put their house for sale, it was gone. You had 10 or 15 people all bidding on the same property. And in situations like that, when you're trying to have what's called like a competitive advantage so that your offer is more attractive, or that you can have a better opportunity for them to accept your offer over someone else's, yes, I would say to offer the seller an earlier closing, like 10 or 15 days, because it gives you that kind of upper edge, especially if the seller needs to move and close quickly. However, there are some situations, a lot of times, where the seller needs to stay in their house longer. And so they may not necessarily want to close that early. And sometimes I would say in general, even though it can be done where we can close a loan in 10 to 15 days, it's not really recommended, because sometimes you need that 30 to 45 day window to make sure, one, you have all your ducks in a row, all the inspections, and if there's any repairs, renovations, things like that needs to be done to the property, all of that stuff is worked out. And usually that time frame is asked for so that you give yourself enough time to work through that stuff. But that's a really good question. You are welcome. So as we mentioned, getting pre-approved is one. So it's a hurdle to get pre-approved, but it's even a bigger hurdle to stay pre-approved, especially if you're building a house. And so I see that come into place a lot, because sometimes it can take anywhere from 3 to 9 to sometimes even 12 months to build a house. And so you may be approved when you first started that process. And now, because it either took longer for the house to be finished, or maybe it even took longer for you to just find a house, staying pre-approved is key. So once you get that pre-approval in hand, it's not like, yay, I got my letter, like I'm good. I don't have to stay on a tight leash anymore. I can go out and spend money and whatever. Don't do that. You definitely want to make sure that you don't open any new debt. You want to make sure that you continue to pay your rent on time, other bills on time. You don't touch whatever money you have saved for your down payment, that you're just making sure that the way that loan officer approved you, whatever your situation looked like, credit, your income, whatever money you had saved, leave all that stuff the same. Because there has been, and it has happened, I have done this for a very long time, where a person don't qualify no more for lots of reasons. So just make sure that that's not you, and make sure that you stay put. So we're going to touch a little bit on investment strategies. So these are for people who may already own a home. And if you already own a home, depending on how long you owned your home, you're probably like, one, a lot of things may have changed depending on when you bought. Or two, you're like, okay, well, what can I do if I am, because I kind of talked about in the beginning of this call, if I am sitting on a lot of equity, if I have this cash value in my house, what options do I have? So leveraging the equity that you have in your existing properties, there's a couple ways you can do it. One of the major ways is called a cash out refinance. So pretty much what you're doing is you're refinancing your mortgage to pretty much borrow against the cash value that's in your house. So here are some key things that you should know when you do that, because I get asked this a lot, especially over the last couple, I would say within the last 6 to 9 months, a lot of people have wanting to, do home improvement projects. They've been wanting to pay off debt, consolidate debt, go on vacation, whatever it may be. And so in order for you to do a cash out refinance, you still have to qualify for that loan. So what a refinance is, and what that means, is that you're pretty much applying for a mortgage all over again. The only difference between that and purchasing a home is that you already have the house because you're the owner. So the same things still go into play, or are still taken into effect when we're trying to refinance you, is we're still looking at your credit. We're still looking at your job history. We're still looking to make sure that, okay, if you borrow this money against your house, can you pay this money back? So making sure that you're still in a good credit and financial situation is still going to be key. So that's very important. But however, typically the rule of thumb and how it works when it comes to a cash out refinance is that as a lender, we will allow you to borrow up to 80% of what your house is worth. We don't let you borrow 100% of the value of your house. You have to leave 20% in the house at all times, unless you're actually selling your house. Then you can wipe out the entire value that you have. So 80%. And so after that, whatever, if you have a mortgage on your home, we subtract that mortgage from whatever that 80% is. And that difference is what you can borrow. When it comes to something called a HELOC or something called a home equity line of credit. So what this is, think about it like I call it like a credit card for your house. So it's a line of credit that you pretty much take against your home. And unlike a cash out refinance gives you like a lump sum of money. So if you want $50,000 out, we'll pretty much at closing wire $50,000 to your account, and that lump sum of money is in your account and you'll pay that back. You end up having just one mortgage because everything is consolidated into one, and it replaces the cash out refinance and replace your existing mortgage. For a home equity line of credit or a HELOC, it's a line of credit. So a line of credit is not a fixed loan, it's revolving. So it's like a credit card. As you borrow money, pay it back, it becomes available again. You borrow money, pay it back, it becomes available again. However, there's pros and cons to both, right? The key thing with a home equity line of credit, a lot of people like it because, it stays open typically for 10 years. You can borrow and pull from it. The payments are really low because you're only really paying the interest back for the first 10 years. And so people tend to like that, especially if they're trying to do home improvement, if they're trying to, use the money to buy another property. We'll kind of touch a little bit on flipping homes or something like that. People tend to like it for those. So those are some pluses there. Versus with the cash out refinance, like I said, it's a fixed payment. Once you have that money, you have it. You don't get to kind of pick and choose like, oh, I only want $1,000 or 10,000 here. You just get it all at once. Another option for investment strategies when you are wanting to think about, okay, how do I leverage the equity in my existing property, is something called buying and holding. I mean, if you have the opportunity to find, let's say, a fixer upper or even a house that may be right before it goes into pre-foreclosure or some kind of bank-owned property or something like that, you can buy the property with the equity in your house. I would recommend doing either one of those, a cash out refinance or a home equity line, get that lump sum of money, which is kind of considered like cash for you. Take that cash, buy the house. Some people just hold it. They don't sell it. They don't fix it up. They just hold it because if you lived in Charleston over the last, year or so, property values just doubled. They just doubled just because of the demand that's here. So sometimes people just decide to buy it, sit on it for a little bit, and then go resell it for a higher price. You can buy it and make it a rental property, which you'll now have residual income coming in every month, or you can flip it. You can, buy something that maybe needs a lot of renovations or repairs, or maybe even minor renovations or repairs. You fix it up, and then now that it's improved, it looks better, it's all pretty and polished up, you can flip it. You can go around and sell it for something bigger. Typically, people who do flips, they try to buy something super low, put very little into it, but still make it look nice. So that way they can, sell it for a higher profit margin. All right, so let me have another question. Is getting a HELOC, which is that home equity line of credit, better than a second mortgage? The only way I can truly say answering that question, it really depends. It depends on, I would say it depends on your current mortgage that you have, what your interest rate is, how long you've been in the house, how much money we're talking about. Because like I said before, there are pros and cons to HELOCs versus the second mortgage, which is the same thing as a cash out refinance. Because with the HELOCs, the interest rate is a lot different. It's something called variable interest versus a fixed rate. So as the market is going up and down, your rate goes up and down on a HELOC. It's never the same. And also for a HELOC, as I mentioned, for the first 10 years, you're only paying interest. So you're never touching the principal. So over time, you will pay more money on your HELOC than you would on a second mortgage. But it has its benefits because sometimes people don't want such a higher payment up front when they're just trying to do little things or they're planning on selling their house. When it comes to a second mortgage, some of the cons is that the closing costs typically are a little bit higher on those versus a home equity line of credit. The closing process is a lot different. On a HELOC, usually sometimes you can get away with not even getting an appraisal done. They usually just look at the tax value assessment on your property or do something called a desktop appraisal. And you can literally have minor closing costs that's only maybe anywhere from $500 to $1,000, and you can close on them like within maybe 2 weeks. A second mortgage, because you're truly applying for a mortgage again, you have to get the house appraised, you have to go back to a real estate attorney, and so there's other closing costs associated. So it could tend to be a lot more expensive. However, the rates are fixed and sometimes the rates are generally lower. So honestly, it really varies. And I would tell you, you just have to kind of whoever you are considering, either going through, whether it's your bank to do a home equity line of credit or a lender like myself to do like a second mortgage, I would have that conversation and make sure that that lender, loan officer, or mortgage banker knows what the purpose of what you're trying to do. So that way they can maybe better advise you which one is better, because sometimes one is better than the other depending on the end game of what you're choosing it for. So, you are welcome. So that's it on our investment strategies and things like that. And that's all I got. I try not to be too long-winded because I didn't want to bore you guys, because mortgage can be very complex and there are lots of layers to the process. And one thing that I would strongly encourage people is that everybody's situation is different. Everybody's financial background is different. And so making sure that you consult with people who have experience or can definitely properly advise you is something that I would always recommend. Let's see, we have another question. So what rental properties do you do? So when I'm making sure, like what kind of loans do we offer for rental properties, if that's what you're asking? If so, when it comes to rental properties, and you're wanting to take out a loan to purchase the rental property, what you can do is, so when we're doing first-time homebuyer loans, typically one of the benefits of those is that the down payments are a lot lower. So usually what's required for a down payment is anywhere from like 3 to maybe 3.5% of whatever the price of the home is. But when you're buying a rental property and you already own a primary resident, then that down payment requirement is much higher. They typically would want anywhere from 15 to 20% in order for you to purchase another property as a rental property. So that way you just have to get creative, because there's lots of creative ways to do so. There's plenty of people that I know where, they bought a house, stayed in it for a few years, and then turned that house into a rental property and then bought another one. So that way they didn't have to necessarily put down that 15 or 20%. They just kept buying another house and each time converting each property to a rental. To me, that's the, a little bit more smarter, savvier way to do it if you're not trying to, kick out 15 to 20% upfront. Now, do you guys have any other questions? So definitely, I forgot to mention. So definitely, I would love to stay in contact. You're very welcome. Contact with you guys. So if you want to get more information, if you want a copy of the presentation and for me to just send you out just some information just regarding the home buying process and things like that, you can definitely provide your email address in the chat, and I can add you, to my list, and I can send out to you guys some information so that way you can get, just information about the process. We always give you first-time home buyer tips. We give you credit tips. So that way you have that information as well. Okay, have another question? You said, is funding for REITs available? I don't think I know what those are. What is that?
The real estate investment trust.
It could be. So I don't deal with those directly. So I wouldn't be the one to probably answer that question not correctly for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. No other questions out there? So, LaShawn, I wanted to get your take on this market that we're in. I know that you're saying that, this area, the home prices are going steadily going up. Do you think that the home prices are stabilizing or that it will continue to go up in this area? And if so, why? Why do you think it's going up so fast?
So my personal opinion is I do think the prices are stabilizing. And I do think that they are going to slightly continue to go up slowly, solely for the fact that Charleston has become very desirable. I mean, we are in the top 10 as the most visited state, moved to state. People love coastal states. We're a southern state, Republican state. People love that stuff. So people are migrating here from New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, California, because our prices, even though our prices to us, people who are more native to this area, are low, to others, this is cheap. It's cheaper than, some of the more expensive states. So when I sit in different planning meetings for the city of North Charleston, even for Somerville, where I'm located currently, the development that they're predicting for the city and all the changes that they're making, they're not anticipating anything to get any lower. It will only go up.
Wow, yes. And then we see a lot of companies that buy houses and they'll pay cash or whatever. And they turn around and they rent those houses. Do you see any kind of pitfalls or anything if you were to sell your house to one of these companies?
No, I've actually had a couple of clients that have done that. I mean, they've done it just to kind of avoid the bidding war or just avoid not necessarily getting what they wanted to truly make on their house. I mean, companies called like Ribbon or OfferPad and things like that have become very successful with just coming up to someone saying, "Hey, I'll pay you cash for your house," And a lot of sellers are more they're more enticed to go with those offers, because if a person has to go through a process and it can take 30 to 45 days to get a loan, and then their loan still may fall through if they're not like a well-qualified, potential buyer, versus someone comes in with like cash on hand and it can be done in like a day or two, more than likely that seller is going to take the cash offer just to avoid the risk of waiting out 30, 45 days and something else happening and they can't get their funds.
Right.
So,
yeah, we see a lot of companies out there popping out. They may not even be from this area, but
that is so true.
They're purchasing a lot of these homes here and they're just renting them out. So so that's something, that is out there. Any other questions? Definitely send LaShawn your information so that she can keep you informed. She has a lot of knowledge that you can, see from this class that she can give you periodically in order to help you with your home buying decision. So definitely, please send your email information to her so that she can continue to keep you informed, and you could possibly, use her services. It will help you to be more knowledgeable when you do go to start trying to purchase your home. So definitely get her information. I do want to let you know also that this class will be recorded. We always upload our classes to YouTube. It's going to be under My Legacy program altogether. It usually takes less than a week for us to post our classes. So please, if you need to go back and look at it and pause it, definitely do that. There was a lot of wonderful information given LaShawn. You did a fabulous job. I think one of the most important things you mentioned was to get somebody licensed to do mortgages. I never thought about that.
Honestly, it's a big difference. And I would say, I mean, where I met you, I mean, working in the banks or whatever, I thought that there was truly only one channel for financing. And I wasn't truly like just aware of other options and how it differs. And so I would tell people, depending on, you know, what you need and the services that you need, because everybody is in a different financial pot or a situation, I would say. And so in certain types of companies cater to, I would say, I don't want to say like a more well-qualified person versus someone who is still, doesn't mean they can't buy, but they may need a little bit more work in order to help them to buy. And what I've generally found is that typically most banks, credit unions, things like that, generally speaking, you typically have to have fairly good credit, a 680 or higher. They typically want some type of relationship there, some type of assets, things like that, in order for those loans to get approved. And then sometimes the programs that they're offered are also very limited and they only fit in a certain box, versus other lenders that are typically outside of the bank. They have a whole array of guidelines or products and things like that that may be able to accommodate a person that may have, you know, a different profile. And so depending on who you are and what your needs are, that's what I said, kind of doing that personal assessment and be like, okay, well, this is where my scores are. And sometimes, you know, Google, hey, what is the best lender for a person who has, you know, a 650 credit score, or what is the best limit for a person who doesn't want to put down as much money, you know? And so the computers are pretty smart, you know, it'll tell you, you know, kind of, you know, steer you to what, you know, what lender may be a better fit.
Right. And I think you made some great points in just trying to get prepared and doing that personal financial assessment and just building your knowledge on the process, so that when you do go to meet with people, you know, they won't be able to tell you just anything, you know, you'll be able to know something about the process to help you. So those were all really good points. The website annualcreditreport.com, where you could get your free credit report for the year, definitely do that. But yes, I would definitely send your information to LaShawn so that she can continue to keep you informed on the home buying, you know, process and the scope of where we're at with home ownership. Because like I said in the beginning, home ownership is a fabulous way to build the wealth and have generational wealth for you and your family. So follow us on Facebook also. We do have a Facebook page. It's My Legacy Program. All the words are separate. And if you have any questions for the Legacy Program, you can reach us by email at legacyprogram227@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to us. Also, if you have any ideas for classes, definitely reach out to us and let us know, because we want to do things that will help you and help you build your knowledge so that you can have that wealth building that LaShawn mentioned earlier in the class. All right. Did we have any other questions? I don't think we had any other questions. All right. Well, I just want to thank you again, LaShawn, for all of the information that you gave us. It was actually fabulous. I'm going to definitely have to get you back to give some more details. We're going to get everything out of you that we can. And I want to thank everyone else for just joining us tonight, for taking the time to building your wealth in this area. We will continue to have classes on home ownership because it is a big thing. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope everyone has a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.